Hello all, Rick here, looking into the prefix codes used by Starfleet. Essentially, a prefix code is the encryption cipher for a Starfleet ship's computer systems. Federation vessels' computer systems are encrypted to prevent outside tampering, and this encryption, at least on some level, uses prefix coding to make it harder to decrypt. At any time, a Starfleet vessel can attempt to interface with a ship's systems, but if the handshake is denied, then the computers do not communicate. It should be noted that a prefix code is not the same as a command code, as these are simply authorized passwords to confirm a user's identity. Having said that, a command access code seems to function similarly to a prefix code and might be the same thing. Anyway, if access is allowed, then you can establish a link and send instructions to another ship's computer system to do a variety of things, which can be useful. If a vessel is not responding and drifting into hazardous radiation fields, you can interface with the computer and tell it to pilot out of the danger zone, or use it to simply transfer data between ships. In such examples, a prefix code is not required, only an officer's clearance. But if a ship needs to force access to another starship, then that is where the prefix codes come in. Beaming over instructions along with the prefix code essentially decrypts a ship's cybersecurity and allows the instructions through, bypassing all command lockouts and cyber warfare security countermeasures. The most common example is if a Starfleet ship is stolen or disobeying orders to the extreme and needs to be seized by a pursuing Starfleet vessel. Locating a prefix code is not an easy affair, with only Starfleet commanders and captains having clearance to access a list of codes from Starfleet. Generally, these codes have to be requested, and the code is changed as a matter of course should a command officer be captured. Additionally, a captain has the prerogative to change their vessel's prefix code at any time, although they do then need to update their ship's records with Starfleet. Not doing so is considered negligence, but it does mean that a rogue captain could simply deny this override by changing the codes. Additionally, codes issued with a prefix command can be countered by an active crew. They would just have to be aware and savvy enough to counter-command their own ship. For example, a prefix code-laden command is given from a vessel to lower shields. The ship complies, until the crew just re-raise them. A smarter prefix command would be to lower the shields, and then do something like run a systems diagnostic that will take 10 minutes to keep them down. Well, now the crew of that affected ship have to cancel the diagnostic, then re-establish shielding. For a bunch of thieves who just purloined a Starfleet ship, they'd have to know how to do all of that very quickly before the pursuing ship sent over boarding parties, or even fired on them. It's a very handy tool to give Starfleet an edge over their own ships. So, what is a prefix code? In real life, a prefix code is a part of a coding system used to prevent some repetition. After being bamboozled by the wiki page on exactly how they operated, I found an example that made more sense seeing it in action, so I'll cover that here. A prefix code essentially means that in a given string of numbers, no prefix will be assigned to a number that has already been used. So in a string of numbers, 2, 13, 30, 42, 47 could be such a code, but in this case, no numbers beginning with 2 can be used, such as 20 something. 42 and 47 are allowed, however, but no numbers can now begin with 42 or 47, so no 420s or 475. Using these numbers, a single line of code might be 213242247. We can separate it as follows, because 2 is the first number, 13 is the next number cannot be 23 because we already have a 2 prefix, so it has to be just a repetition of the 2 on its own. Repetition is fine, just not 20s, 200s, 2000s, or so on. The next code is 42, at least because while we could have a 4 on its own, we cannot have a 247. So the 2 have to be attached to the first 4 as 42, which then leaves 47. Now, unless we have the prefix code itself, which in this example was 213 30, 42, 47, we cannot comfortably decode that string of numbers because we don't know for certain what numbers we're trying to form, and what we have to avoid. Now, this is a major security problem for Starfleet, but perhaps not the ultimate ace that people might think. As I already covered, prefix commands can just be countered anyway, so it relies on the ignorance of the thieving crew to be most effective, as it was in the Wrath of Khan. The use of prefix codes was also seen in several other instances, such as when the USS Phoenix went rogue against the Cardassians and Starfleet orders, or when the USS Titan confronted the entire Federation Armada over Earth in 2401. In the former example, the codes were given over to a Cardassian ship in order to defend itself from the USS Phoenix, but the crew were able to fight through the interference and destroy the ship regardless. Captain Maxwell then changed the codes to prevent tampering again. So here we clearly see that it's not the great equalizer you may expect. In the latter example, the Federation fleet had been commandeered by partially assimilated Starfleet crews, and the USS Titan A was basically sending prefix commands to many ships in the fleet to interfere with their shielding and weapons systems in order to survive long enough to buy time. In this instance, with the sheer volume of opponents, well, it's unlikely that the USS Titan would have survived for very long, with the Borg eventually learning to counter the commands effectively and locking out the Titan. Given time, the prefix codes would have all been countered, and the only reason it was not instantaneous is that the Borg's attention was on several tasks at once, and there were resisting crews on board too. The prefix code that we see on screen is the Reliance 16309, which, let's be fair, is a dangerously short code that any password prompt will tell you is poor and give you that little red frowny face. Although this could be depicted as 16309 or 16309, it only really makes sense if this is one part of the cipher and the rest is an automated system that needs to come from a Starfleet ship or something. Real-life encryption is already far more complicated than just using a prefix code, but hey, it was first established in the 80s and it's a film. Later codes are likely far more convoluted as we don't actually see them. Of course, there are other ways to bypass a Starfleet system and gain control of the vessel, but these are more in the vein of cyber warfare. When these go through, however, recent Trek seems to delight in the hack your enemy trope, and we have seen several examples of Starfleet being its own worst enemy. This is often something far worse than a simple prefix command, as it seems these cannot be countered. Starfleet really needs to beef up its own security. I'm amazed prefix codes are not more abused, but I guess it goes to show that it was still a very secure system. Most of the time when Starfleet is hacked, it's actually not the prefix codes that did it. Thanks for watching this breakdown on what a prefix code is in Star Trek. I've been Rick, and I'll see you later for another lore video. Until then, goodbye.